All right, we're back here with NextGen. Nate, thanks for joining us. And we have some news on the Chevy 9-speed. So, Nate actually sent this over to me today. There was a story about a girl that had a 2021 Chevy Trailblazer. We'll put that up here and just give you a little bit more detail on it. The transmission blew at 30,000 miles. Nate, what do you know about the GM 9-speed? Are you getting calls on those?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. I bought a ring light, by the way. I know everybody is always trashing me for my camera quality, so I bought a ring light. We'll see if that improves anything. Um, the General Motors 9-speed transmission is something we get a lot of calls on, and we have not tried to make parts for it because our concern is that it's not a DIY friendly enough transmission to work on. And the intent of our products is for them to be things the average person can do. So the market is there, and that means the failures are there. Now, who's reaching out to us is shops, automotive repair facilities, specifically transmission shops. The issue with the General Motors 9-speed transmission is that even though it's its own IP, it's its own intellectual property, it has a lot of similar parts to the 10 speeds, and those parts that fail are producing similar issues. So the General Motors 9-speed transmission has a big problem with torque converter shutter, and some of the clutches engaging slowly, creating flares, bangs, shutters. That's the problem that most of these people run into. And the reason they run into these problems is because the valve bodies, much like the General Motors 10-speed valve body, in my opinion, are designed to fail. And so it seems like this young lady had an issue at 30,000 miles. No part of me is surprised. The vehicle appears to be 5 years old. I've said for a long time, I'm an insider. This is what I do for a living. And I'm promising you, they're designing parts to fail as soon as the warranty's done. This has a 5-year warranty. It looks like she made it 5 years, and that was the end of that. And it looks like other people had a similar experience.
Yeah, it's interesting that the comments, this isn't something like you said, the demographic is probably going to be younger women, middle-aged women maybe that really like that size of vehicle. They don't want a massive vehicle. They're better than a minivan, but they're not going to be DIY people. And the complaints, we don't see as many complaints as the trucks, but they also don't sell as many. So when you see stuff like this reported, when you see NHTSA complaints, it's interesting to see them at like 60,000, 80,000, 62,000. It's like exactly what you've been saying. They're just they're getting that prediction down pretty good from the engineering side.
Well, that's the intent. The entire goal is to make sure the vehicle fails when the warranty's up. So, if you're viewing this at home and you question if that's true or if I'm just talking, like think of it like this: these companies, I'll break this down so that anyone can understand. Because I know every time we do a video, it's the first time that many people hear the message. So, if you own a large publicly traded company, you have something called fiduciary obligation, which means that you have an obligation to produce wealth for your shareholders and to act in their best interest as shareholders. So let's take that for a second and think, okay, how can we make more wealth for these shareholders? Because that's what we're legally obligated to do. Well, something you could do if you can only throttle sales so much is to make sure that more people are buying maintenance and repair components. Well, this comes from basically three things. One is you need to maintain the vehicle, two is a collision, three is a mechanical failure. So, for maintenance, that's your oil changes, your just your fluid changes, fluid and filter, right? Collisions are obviously crashes. Mechanical failures are something that you have the ability to throttle. Um, you can't force people to maintain their car. You can't force people to get into an accident or not get into an accident as a manufacturer. You can force people's vehicles to fail. And you do that, and these companies, I believe, do that by making the parts out of inferior quality componentry. So, for example, we use billet steel or in some cases, billet aluminum. The manufacturer almost always uses cast aluminum for anything that they can. The claim is that this is weight reduction. I call it quality reduction. But either way, uh, if you can force the product to fail, you can force that person to give you money. So, because they have an obligation to produce as much wealth as possible for their shareholders, that means that they have an obligation to make sure that the lifespan of the vehicle is limited, meaning that you, as the consumer, now have to pay crazy prices. to maintain a vehicle that's having recurring mechanical failures outside of warranty. Now, before the warranty ends, they're responsible for that. This means that there's an exact cutoff where it stops being their problem and starts being your problem that you pay them to fix. Now, that period in time is the end of warranty coverage. Now, some people are going to say, well, then you buy aftermarket parts. Hold on. I'm an aftermarket parts CEO and I design aftermarket parts. And what I can tell you is that with aftermarket parts, the complication there is that we have to use the OEM for a lot of things. Now, we do everything in house that we possibly can. We make all our valves, plates, all that. It's all our intellectual property. In fact, I'm the one who designs the stuff. That's what I do. I engineer transmission parts. The complication is I'll give you an example. Even for a firm like us that's all about American made in house, all that, even for us, let's say we're building a valve body for you that upgrades your vehicle and lifetime warranty and all that. We're going to get the harness, the temp sensor. There's only one place to get them. And it's either the OEM or somebody who licenses the product from the OEM. That for the consumer means that even if you go aftermarket, in many cases, I would say in most cases, there is some financial connection to the OEMs. They're going to make money no matter what, as long as your product fails and it's outside of warranty. If you were a shareholder in that company and you didn't care about anything ethical, you just wanted money, wouldn't you say, stop making reliable stuff? You're missing an opportunity to make money once the warranty's over. And if that becomes painful enough, they'll just go buy another one. And then they get to screw you on financing. They'll mark up the loan. You have the buy rate and the sell rate. Look into that. That's not necessarily an issue, but Lord knows they don't tell you, right? You can pay for the nitrogen tire fill. You can pay for the $300 door guards that are $3 on eBay. They can get you again. And so the intent is to continuously recapitalize you. That's my concern. And this is an example of that.
So, do you think this is actually a pretty good example of maybe what they wanted to do on the truck side, which is they really probably would have preferred with the half tons and 3/4 tons, if they could have got those to 60, 80,000 miles, that would have been a much more manageable thing. They had a much bigger debacle on their hands with that early
Yeah.
on.
That was design malpractice. People that watch my videos know this. Uh, NextGen drivetrain is patent pending on a delete kit for the components that cause that problem in the valve body. When I designed that, General Motors didn't want to use the product. They didn't want to work with us. A few people did, but it would always go high enough to get struck back down, right? These components are designed to eliminate the parts that cause the problem. The reason that's relevant is because we have been told by the transmission industry and by these OEMs, it's all there. It's for your safety. It's for reliability. It's for emissions reasons. I wouldn't tamper with the stuff. It's not safe to work on. And they tell you all this total BS about how there's nothing on the vehicle that's not meant to be there. Well, I agree, but I agree for a different reason. I believe that those parts are on the vehicle and meant to be there because they triggered failures prematurely that many people had to pay for out of pocket. And so these companies make more money when they make componentry that fails the second the warranty's up. It's just a way to make money. Apple wants to sell more iPhones. General Motors would like to sell more transmissions. Do you think they would lose sleep if somebody call your local dealership and say, I want to buy 500 transmissions? They're going to be so happy they'll think they won't even believe you. This is how they make money. They sell this stuff. If they can't get you on the new car, they're going to get you on maintaining your car. That is how they make money. And people think that they're not trying to make these products fail when the warranty's up. They are. I mean, look at this. These people all experience failures right around 5 years, 60,000 miles.
Yeah.
There's a couple examples where they didn't, but the people reporting and responding to this information, what are the majority of them saying? I made it 62,000 miles. I made it 70,000 miles. I made it 5 years, 6 months. It's a 2020. Well, you know what that means? That means that your 5 year, 60,000 mile warranty elapsed and it was over. And then you immediately had a failure. That's not an accident. The Allison 5 speed transmission, if I remember correctly, if I'm wrong, please correct me, had a 100,000 mile 5 year warranty on that component in the Duramax pickup trucks. We see them with 800 plus thousand miles semi frequently. I mean, it seems like the ones that pop early are at 250, 300. Yeah, it's like this didn't used to be a thing. This became a thing. And it became a thing, in my opinion, because Land Rover made it popular. And that's why I call it the Land Rover mentality. We're going to sell garbage. We're going to pretend it's luxurious garbage, so you spend more on the garbage. And then we're going to make it a nightmare to own the moment the warranty's up. And we're going to punish you financially by making sure everything crumbles on that vehicle until you have reached a point where you've either funneled so much money into us that you give up or you just buy another one. And then they give you these incentives to stay in the brand. So then they get you on another Land Rover. And then there's the final factor. Have you ever monitored what a Land Rover goes down to in cost when you drive it off the lot? I mean, it's the worst of anything. I mean, I see Land Rovers that were 150, $200,000 new, and they're $20,000 a matter of years later. They're not worth any. They're like Bentleys. I owned one. They just decay into nothing. And that's part of why I tell people that are, doing well in business or something, and they're like, Nate, what fancy car should I buy? Should I get a Lamborghini, a Ferrari? You shouldn't get any of them. They suck. I mean, if you're willing to light a match to 500, $800,000, well, then buy whatever you effing want. But if you're not, I wouldn't buy any of those things. I would buy something that doesn't decay into nothing. Land Rover made it popular, in my personal belief. Land Rover and their boyfriends at Jaguar made it popular, in my belief, to make vehicles that decay into nothing over time and then charge you to fix those vehicles. And then when you get sick of it, sell you another one and then recycle that consumer lifespan. That's what I believe they're doing. And it's because it makes them more money. In fact, I've heard them say it.
Yeah, it used to be like a wealthy thing where I know people that used to just cycle BMWs, either lease them or buy them. They'd have them for 2 years, get a new one, and they were accepting of the fact that they would have tons of repairs at 60,000 if they kept it, and so they just didn't keep them. And that mentality is pushed down into like regular person cars now. The exact same mentality. And what it does is, that's why I don't like doing these videos all the time, is because it creates fear, and I don't want to create fear in people, because what fear does is it just makes people go buy new stuff. So they keep something. They're like, well, I'm not gonna have anything that's old. Then I'll just every 2 years I'll cycle, or I'll get a lease. So then that gives them exactly what they want, because they either want that person that's full of fear to cycle every 2 years, or like you said, to recapture them in another way through new transmissions or whatever. So they win either way.
Well, I don't, I have a different perspective. So, yes, they can. That there's totally a possibility for that to happen. But this is what I tell people at home. When, you ever see those videos where it's like, I'm a heart surgeon and I don't recommend this, this, and that for your health, right? Or I'm a neurologist and I recommend avoiding these foods for brain health or something. Those are so useful because you're taking people that are a professional in their craft and they're giving you advice that they don't get anything out of giving you. So you know it's likely to be very truthful. If there's a piece of information I could give to every single person at home who's watching this or who watches content with me, new cars are intentionally designed to fail. And the intent, and I know people that work at OEMs, like none of them, the people that are worried about reliability are not in positions of power. The people that want them to fail prematurely have marketing jobs, and then they just put the word engineering in there to make them feel good. I cannot tell you the number of people that I see get escalated to positions of authority in engineering at OEMs are almost always people that are professionals at playing the game. They're not the best engineers. They're the most liked people in engineering by the people above them who make those hiring decisions. And this is why everybody that seems to be an engineer at General Motors that I've ever talked to in my life, including Cello, every single one of them that I hear talk has the exact same input that they're making garbage. But somehow you talk to their leader, their shepherd, the person in charge of engineering, and they think everything's perfect. You know who thinks everything's perfect? Marketers. People who think everything is messed up are engineers. So when you have somebody whose title is engineer and they think everything's perfect and you should buy it, I would label that a marketer. I don't care that you went to Carnegie Mellon University or that you have an MS in mechanical engineering. I don't care. You're in a marketing job once you get to that point. Well, how is it that people who are engineers at these firms know that they're selling garbage, but the people in charge of them don't know? It sounds to me like they're answering to the people in charge of them and they know better, and the people in charge have a different interest than the people designing the parts. The people designing the parts are just doing what they're told to make money. And most of them have enough pride in what they do to want it to work correctly. The issue is that above that person, you go from engineer to bean counter. And when you go to bean counter, all they want to see is the intent is that the numbers continue to go up. They want to see the arrow go up and to the right, green, plus symbols, dollar signs. That's their language. The problem is that their syntax relies on you spending more money. So this is why I urge people not to buy new cars. I have, you know, a quantity of cars, and one of them is new, but it's an engineering vehicle that we're using to design a kit for many of the people at home who have ZF8 speed transmissions. Other than that, I don't own a new car. I'm not interested in new cars. Other than vehicles that we use to design parts, I've never bought a new car. Well, once I bought a new car, twice. I apologize, twice. But that's out of a lot of cars. And I stopped because I started to learn more. And as I evolved in this profession, and I started to hear people that work at these firms pridefully jeering, feeling confident about making parts that suck. When I saw that, I was like, this is sick. Like I'm going to relate it to medicine again because it's a good example. If your doctor performed a procedure on you that was designed to make you need the procedure again in 3 years, that's called medical malpractice. And that's like a huge tort situation. Like it's a huge personal injury thing. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. What I can tell you is that the word's malpractice and bad things happen and people get big settlements out of that. Why is it that when people in my profession do that, it's not malpractice? It's not wrong. It's not a violation of the ethics of the profession to design parts with the intent that they fail. I think that's wrong. And I think that the people at OEMs who I know watch these videos, why is this okay? Like, do you go home and feel good that in exchange for $600,000 a year or whatever it is, that you go to work and willfully create a vehicle that puts some single mom in small town America $8,000 underwater the moment the warranty is up? Does that make you feel good about yourself? Does it make you feel good about yourself to put feed limit valves in the 10L80 and 10L1000 in a place where they could cause the rear wheels to lock up? And then when it happens and we have a fix and we're willing to give it to you for so little, you can't possibly design something for cheaper. You still don't want to work with us. And you push out a bulletin telling every dealer that there's just simply no fix and you're working on a software patch. Is that something that you go to bed and feel good about? I'd be embarrassed. And I don't care what you guys think of me. I don't care what you think of NextGen drivetrain. I don't care if you have a bot leave a 1-star review. I don't care. It's wrong. I want everyone to know the bad faith engineering malpractice that takes place at these companies. I think it's sick. And I think if you're one of those people, that you should go home and feel terrible about who you are and what you're willing to trade your dignity for in exchange for a paycheck, in my opinion.
If it is someone that is at GM, well, most of them can't talk anyway. We saw what happened to Cello, so
Yeah, he's gone. Yeah,
no longer
big gone.
someone we can contact.
He got Faisal Kaloft. Google that one. Faisal Kaloft.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, he got Faisal Kaloft. He had a reasonable objection to the way business is done, and now his career is over. Faisal
Weirdest thing,
Kaloft, Ford Motor Company. Google it.
weirdest thing about Cello is how he's not. I mean, he wasn't working for GM for years, and they still came after him. I mean, you can't even. And he wasn't even. He was so tame. It was
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah, and then you have me who's like wild, but I'm not bound by non-disclosures. I have only ever done product design in the aftermarket, and I've only ever done, well, that's not true. I've done product design for other firms, but it was, we make a product, they sell the product, and then like we sell the rights to it and stuff like that. But the RaceX program. But that's kind of my point is
Yeah.
when people don't know this. So like I want to make sure that like everyone at home walks away with so much more information than they had before. So I wish to explain. When you become an engineer at these OEMs, it is literally like a cult. The level of brand indoctrination is totally otherworldly. I had a job at AutoZone for like 8 seconds when I was a teenager. I was an unruly teenager. Uh, That job, I spent about a day consuming propaganda about AutoZone and how great they are and everything. And I really have no dispute with AutoZone. I think AutoZone is doing the God's work at getting non OEM product to people. I think AutoZone is honestly an amazing alternative where you will absolutely spend less than the dealership 99% of the time. But my point is, I was exposed to information about AutoZone for about a day in training, maybe 2 days. When you become an engineer at these OEMs, it is a never domestically. The international ones, I have no idea. Those are people in sweatshops half the time. But domestically, and I know this because and you know who you are because you watch the videos. I have a good friend who used to work at SRT. He used to do software, so he would write the ECU files for Hellcat, Trackhawk, those projects, Demon, things like that. These people are exposed to never ending, constant Kool Aid drinking. It's literally incessant. The engineers at these OEMs are obligated to laud for this company every second of every day that they are there. It's very culty. And if you're a dissenter, then like you get Faisal Khalaf, you get celloed, you get kicked out of the cool kids club. They really operate like gangs. And that's why I call them gangs. I mean, imagine some kid who's misguided joining a gang and then saying, you know what? I don't really like this gang anymore. I think I'm better than this. I'm going to start a business or learn a trade or go to college for something that matters, presumably. Well, the gang would just look at him as a turncoat. And that's what happens to these engineers. That's the other side of the fulcrum. The people who get promoted to positions of authority are the ones that the shareholders think are going to bat for their best interest, which means they're not the best engineers, they're the best income producers. They are fundraisers. Fundraising is called revenue, it's called marketing. That's why I say when you see people in positions of engineering authority at these OEMs, that is a marketing job. These companies do not put people in front of cameras that don't have marketing jobs. I don't care if they called them the vice president of engineering, of powertrain, of suspension. I don't give a shit. They're marketing. Why would they put them in front of a camera to tell you how great the product is? An
Yeah.
engineer would tell you what's defective with the product. They don't. They tell you what's so great and why you should spend your money on it and you need to buy it. That's called marketing. It's just marketing. Like don't and that's why these fake news organizations in the automotive industry, many of these like big legacy media brands, I can think of a few, get an opportunity to break a giant corruption story in the automotive industry. And a bunch of people say, you need to reach out to me because I know all about it. And I have the receipts, I've got the photographs, I've got it all. And your response is, thank you, Nate. So it sounds to me like these organizations are not journalists. Because if you were a journalist, you would hold power to account. So when you get exposed to information that one of your sponsors has created a giant scam of misinformation that screws normal people, and I have all the screenshots, I have the proof, I've got all of it. And people say, you need to report on this, talk to Nate at NextGen. And I say, and I taunt you guys publicly and say, you won't do an interview with me because those are your donors. Your response is, thank you, Nate. You know who you are. You're selling your dignity for money. And that's embarrassing because there are lots of people that will probably buy a vehicle. You know exactly who you are, who will probably buy a vehicle off of the falsehoods that you propagate. And those people may be financially damaged permanently because you lied to them and you willfully hid information. So I just don't trust any so called automotive journalism because if you were a journalist, you would fight for the truth. They are no more journalists than mainstream media networks, for profit media networks. They are there to make money. They're there to sell commercials. They're there to sell streaming, data, viewership. They are the eBay of eyeball traffic. That's what that is what for-profit media is outside of the automotive industry. And that exists in the automotive industry. And people should know that before they spend their money here.
Well, thanks, Nate. I appreciate it. Anything else you want to talk about on the 9 speed?
Sure. Yeah, the General Motors 9 speed transmission was designed to fail outside of warranty, in my opinion. Uses the same solenoid regulator valves, pulse dampeners. It's got all those same components. We have a couple of them that we have in the company for engineering resources, and we've looked at them. I don't think I would like to design a kit for it because there doesn't appear to be enough demand. If that were to change, perhaps I would change my decision. But it was designed to fail. In fact, I'll tell you, my first words out of my mouth when I was first exposed to a General Motors 9 speed transmission is that this is garbage and it's designed to be thrown away. That valve body, maybe I should take pictures and show you when I get a chance. That valve body is not only made out of the same cheap metal all the other ones are. Every part of that valve body is somewhere where if you try to machine something out and make it bigger, you're gonna have a crack risk. Or if you try to delete something, you're likely to cause a failure somewhere else in the system. Every part of that valve body, in my opinion, is designed to be thrown away. So I got a couple VIN numbers and called a GM dealership and ran the retail price on those parts. They're thousands of dollars. It's actually not necessarily cheaper, but barely more expensive to just buy another transmission. They want to sell as many transmissions as they can. And they want to push out repair shops by making repair impossible because you're dependent on OEM parts that require solenoid strategization to run, which is an electronic system of controlling how much oil flows through or to solenoids and when they fire on and off. They make these things unfixable. It's sick. They are making cars you can't fix. And if you're not allowed to fix something, I would argue you don't own it.
Yeah, soon enough. That's coming. Well, thanks, Nate. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on.